Welcome back to another fantastic episode of I'm going to Talk and You're going to Listen. Uh, I said my last one would be the last one for a while, but I ended up getting some positive feedback, so hooray. So thank you, folks, on my last one, my regulars, CDK, uh, Jimmy, welcome to the party, and Gaius, aka Espirit 2, and Birio, my best friend Dio. So, um, something that I keep screwing up, I keep saying, talking about Sanctuary City stuff, I keep saying Atlanta over and over and over and over. And I've had to correct myself, I don't know how many times in the last week or two, and say, it's not Atlanta, it's Denver. And I even wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it's Denver, not Atlanta. However, Georgia has a lot of sanctuary problems too. And apparently Denver got a lot of hot water in and had to walk back their Tiananmen Square metaphor, which I'm sorry, that's like one of the most tone deaf metaphors on the planet that you can use. I mean, but these ding dongs declare everything to, the World War II stuff now, so the if you don't understand like the irony of the using Tiananmen Square as a metaphor is that just I guess like the WW2 stuff, there's a lot of people that say the Tiananmen Square thing didn't even really happen. Um, Therein lies the irony for using that as a metaphor to begin with. It's just uh, it doesn't work. It didn't even work in the context that they wanted it to use it for. Even with the irony, it just made it even more cringe. And it's just like you really didn't think about that. And then I was watching another. There's all these dog whistles. Once these like secret codes, and they're all over. Like every group. This is an aside. Every group has so many secret codes and dog whistles and double entendres and little things that they say that it is virtually impossible to ever infiltrate a group that you're not a part of. You have to hang out with them constantly because you don't want to accidentally like say the thing that they said two times ago and they invented the new thing and you're going to be lost. So if any of you are secret spies for other organizations out there, or shills or grifters or whatever, um, you especially politicians, um, K Bone Cackles McGee, got in trouble for this a lot. Code switching, where they switch their voices around to blend in with whatever ethnicity they're in. That only works if, at least from like a moral, I guess, standpoint. Like if you grew up in Illinois and so you start talking, like a rural Illinoisan, and you go hang out in real rural Illinois for a while. If you start talking like them again, nobody's going to think you're code switching. If you spent like half your life there, right? I don't have an accent. Pacific Northwest doesn't have an accent. It's everybody else. I'm not from Boston at all, but I swear if I'm on the phone with Boston people for too long, I start hearing everything in the in a Bostonian accent. Um, and I get a lot of my UK accents screwed up with like my Australian accent and stuff. So you not only have to know all the secret code words, but you got to know like the inflection of all the sounds and voices and stuff. Like I touched on this in my books a lot when I tried to book 15 when I tried to have a juggalo and actually a group of juggalos in my story and learning like what makes a juggalo tick, and the real ones versus like the fake grifter ones. It's the same thing with like libertarians, like real libertarians versus all the fake grifter libertarians. Same thing with like there's really like two types, I guess you'd say, of like Native Americans, the kind that milk off the teats of the three letters, and then the other ones that kind of want to be left alone. And further and further into the culture war, just by hanging around people, you just learn more stuff. I know that sounds like dumb and obvious, but like, I was thinking about this a lot after my last podcast, and like, the problem is I've explained this stuff in older episodes, but it always seems to like come together in different ways. I always want people to just listen to the old ones, but I kind of like, I think of better ways to put things together sometimes, and I think what I'm trying to say is there's one side that lives in an echo chamber, and they are simply emulating diversity. And during the Rona, when there was a lot of protests, one side didn't have to work. One side, that same side, got paid to protest. So the protests were massive. That has to happen again for the protests to be that massive. But what they would do is they put their little, song and dance, literally. If you've never watched a Lefty Lou protest, um, it's pretty interesting. They started off with speakers of every single represented group that they have. I don't necessarily know how they choose the order, but every single speaker is like allotted a certain amount of time, and it's kind of chaotic and boring at the same time, but that's their facsimile of like inclusivity. They checked the box, they stamped the box, and they kind of have to pay each other tribute, sort of based on whose area of operation it is, and they have to kind of get each group's blessing before they operate in the area. Otherwise, they're kind of protesting unsanctioned. And this is going to sound racist, but an example of that, this happened several times, is the ninja brigade decided for some stupid reason to protest in a predominantly black neighborhood. Still have no idea why they did this, and they started torching black neighborhood businesses and stuff, including like a Popeyes, which is just, I know it sounds like the most racist shit on the planet, but I swear they did it. And like I want to say a YMCA. It was one of their local like civic centers. Like, nobody knows why they went down there and did it. And eventually there was pushback, and they got pushed back out again. I don't know if they thought they were too big for their britches, but there can be a lot of friction if they don't have like enough overwhelming power of their own to march into neighborhoods that they aren't sanctioned to march into. Those are for identity affiliated neighborhoods. There's non-identity affiliated neighborhoods, aka the whites, that are open season. In fact, you've seen, I want to say Baltimore, I always get it confused. One of the really, really bad ones where they were saying go march into the rich neighborhoods. Rich is code word for white. And go do the things. So you might be asking yourself, what does this have to do with anything? Well, I don't think the protests. I don't think I still do not think that the criteria for the protests have really been met to spark giant protests. Something still has to happen. Either someone's got to sit on somebody for 9 minutes, or something has to happen. The penny, like for example, hashtag free Penny. If like Penny got acquitted for some reason in the New York case, where he bravely defended an entire subway full of people. This absolute lunatic. You can go look it up. Saved this whole subway full of people, and waited till the police got there. By the way, when you're in a big metal tube, you're screwed. You hope to God someone is going to come save you because you're stuck there until the next stop, and you're lucky if there's going to be any security there or not. It doesn't matter if you're in New York or the BART trains in Los Angeles or the MAX train in Pisslandia or Seattle. Um, you're screwed in that metal tube, and they can do to you whatever they want until that next stop. So Penny saved everybody. The guy was still alive. Paramedics had him. And then something happened, and the perpetrator died. And then Penny got strung up for the whole thing. And he's still trying to fight it in court. And he was lied to by the people interrogating him. Like, that's why you don't talk to cops, get your lawyer, blah, blah, blah. They lied to him, got him to say some things that got him in more trouble than I think he would have been if he just kept his mouth shut. But he was lied to because they have to lie to you to get a conviction anyway, you're not allowed to defend yourself. So anyway, let's say like Penny gets off, that could start another massive civil upheaval. But people still have to, you have to fund it. And I used to think that like, well, people have been like stealing and looting enough to where they can fund just through normal street crime. But I'm not sure if that's the case anymore. And with Orange Man around, like they're unless the DNC or somebody is just gonna fund, they could just like bankroll 4 years of massive civil upheaval. Because back in 2015 and 2016, I think that's what happened. Is the DNC or whoever, the strategic philanthropists, like funded the protesters. So there has to be a catalyst that happens. It could be the Palestine thing. There's still a lot of like free Palestine protesters that are really pissed off, but I'm not sure there's enough of them. So what I think is going to set the whole thing off is going to be this whole sanctuary city deportation thing. And you might be asking, what the hell, blah, blah, blah. This is all just talking in circles. Well, just like the protesters can't really go into neighborhoods of identity groups that haven't approved them going into those neighborhoods, or entire towns sometimes in some cases. The city, state, and federal, and county have like kind of similar issues, but not the problem. What's different here is the guy that's being put in charge of CBP or ICE or whatever. He, see if I can find his name here. Not that guy. Not that guy. Tom Human, the incoming border czar. He's like a super hardcore guy. He said, I wasn't going to do this podcast, but all of a sudden he said the piece that has been missing. He said if they have to go into liberal cities, sanctuary cities, he said they would send twice as many people if they had to. And if you remember me from last episode, I think I was saying like, maybe I didn't say it, maybe it was in one of my deleted episodes or something, but you would have to send an overwhelming amount of people in to go at it. If federal had to go at it on its own, you might be scared of martial law. Well, just one problem: the National Guard is almost completely disarmed and training issues and their equipment's falling apart. So then you might be scared of federal. Federal is highly trained with infinite resources. But just like how the National Guard takes like 3 days to deploy, if you're lucky, it takes federal even longer. That is exactly why most of the 3-letter agencies wanted to have their own TAC teams, so they didn't have to wait. You know, the IRS was going to have its own TAC team, every I can't remember how many of them have it. There's like what 50 agencies that each had their own tax teams or some insane, some massive number. That was all just so they didn't have to wait to get permission to go raid whatever their three letters wanted to raid. Well, it still takes them forever because they have to fly onesie twosie people in from all over the country to do that. They don't have like a TAC team. Like every agency doesn't have a TAC team on standby in every single city. Maybe in the big cities like Homeland does and ICE does, like CBP does, but like the rest of them don't. So if ICE has to like double, which makes sense because if they have no state patrol to help them, if they have no state police to help them, if they have no city police to help them, and they have no sheriffs to help them, although the sheriffs might, the sheriffs can if they want, but the rest would just stand back in a sanctuary city and sanctuary state situation. You're looking at maybe two squads instead of one squad. So 24, 25 guys, and then however many sheriffs they can muster to like raid a house. And you might think that's overkill and that's overreach and that's this and that. But here's the problem. What happens in Pisslandia is it's like going into fucking Somalia. Like it's going into Mogadishu. Like the place is a monumental shithole. So if the lefty loos figure out, if the commies, the ninjas, if they figure out that ICE is going to come get somebody, they have like Telegram groups or whatever encrypted, I don't know, WhatsApp, I don't know what the fuck they use now, but they're going to go, hey, there's a bunch of feds showing up at this street and that street. And you bet your ass when this shit is ready to pop, they could have hundreds of people there. And the feds have to be super careful because it's optics, right? They could be getting some kind of like violent psychopath off the streets that has done horrible, horrible things, unspeakably horrible things. But these commies are so fucking stupid. They'll just use it as an excuse to fight it out with the feds, knowing that they have to, knowing that they have optics to worry about. I can tell you the last time Portland PD tried to help the feds do one of these a couple of years ago, Portland PD got their asses handed to them. They had to physically run out of the area, just like fucking Mogadishu, because their cars were destroyed and they had to fall back. This is like real shit. Like when the cities pop off, there will be like squads of goons running around the city with AKs. It's surreal. Like you would not believe it. These aren't even the gangs. These are just the normal protester goons. They roll so heavy, open carrying AKs and shotguns in their protests and stuff. And that's why the cops won't touch them with a 10-foot pole. The feds won't either unless they start pointing guns at feds. You might think, well, has that ever happened? Yes, it happened once. And I don't know what happened to that person. I think he got disappeared. You don't do that. And but one of them, I don't know if they got too big for their britches or whatever they thought. So the feds don't take those groups head on. What they do is they figure out who the key people are or who the key antagonizers are, and they will bag them in unmarked vans. I'm not even making this up. So there's just like this shadow war brewing between the ninjas and basically CBP, ICE, Homeland. And so what Tom Human said when he said that they were going to double their people. That is exactly what they're going to have to do. They so that's interesting. That tells me that he's serious, A, and that tells me B, he is ready to go to war with sanctuary states. Because if he starts, I think what's going to happen is the states are going to have to stand down when they realize that if they impede Tom's work, he can arrest them all for aiding and abetting and sheltering illegals. I don't think that'll happen because of the optics, but I think it would be hilarious and I think it would be appropriate. The question is going to be, again, back to the Pacific Northwest, is how much does Tina Kotek and Fentanyl Ferguson and the new scum, how much do all three of them want to go to war with the federal government over illegals? How bad do they want to shelter illegals? Here's the thing though, I think we will find out before the Pacific Northwest. I think we're going to find out in Atlanta, in Denver, in New York, places where the. So I think two things are going to happen. One, I think illegals are going to start leaving like crazy because they don't want to get rounded up like pigs, dogs, cattle. But I think the cartels are going to start preparing because the end game isn't to get out, Johnny. That's not illegal guy that is just minding his own business, and it's not even to get out person who is just a raging trafficker, although that's going to be a part of it. It's going to be to uproot and expel the cartels. And Orange Man is going to figure out which country they're from, and he's going to tell the country that they have to take them back and they have to rebuild their prisons and secure their prisons and take them all. The cartels are not going to want to leave. And going back to the one percenter biker gangs and all of the other organized crime that are domestic, they are going to have to decide whose side they want to be on. All these gangs are going to have to decide how patriotic they're going to be. Are they going to side with a bunch of cartels who are really dangerous now but are on their way out? Or are they going to side with the feds or just stand on the sidelines and let the feds do their job, which just gets rid of the competition? And so that's why last episode I said like a lot of the organized crime is probably drawing their battle lines on maps right now, going, where do we hold the line? Because they have to last for 2 months. They have to last for Orange Man to get his guys and gals in so he can ramp up deportations. He has got to stop. He has to stop. He has to stop the border crossings, which I think he already talked to Mexico and they already said that they would stop him. I doubt it, but they can try, and that's a good start. But like that California border is going to be gnarly, and the Canadian border is going to be gnarly. It is so easy for them to get down through Canada. It's not even funny. So the illegals are going to be like flooding over the border for the next 2 months. They're going to be shoring up their resources. They're going to be planting their feet down. The ones that don't want to have anything to do with this are just going to leave if they have somewhere to go. And a lot of them do. A lot of them have somewhere to go from their other country. They're not fleeing war. That's just so idiotic. They're just here for work. Not a big deal. Or they're here because they're traffickers and they're trying to exploit everybody and bring the country down. Or they're sleeper cells and we've got a different problem entirely. So what we have here is like a rush to see how far the bad guys can get in less than 2 months, because this Tom guy has already got his shit planned out, and they're already working on the wall and razor wire, and they're already staffing up. Again, you could check the job sites, and Homeland is staffing up. I think Homeland is getting ready for war, an internal domestic war to get the illegals out. However, one of the questions to Orange Man a lot of the times was like, how are you going to staff up to do this? And he said, we get local people to do it. A lot of the local places said no. So I think there's going to be a massive surge. It's probably already started of illegals from unfriendly states to friendly states and cities. That's going to consolidate them, and the crime is going to go up like fucking crazy. Again, not because they're all bad guys, because the cartels are brutal and they can just immediately conscript them all through violence because the city, the state can't go into the migrant centers and do anything. In fact, in New York, there's videos of the cops just getting their asses handed to them, just the crap beat out of them. And then those people that beat them up were out the same day. Um, and that's the problem that you have. So what's this look like? What's going to happen is you're talking about a surge of Homeland trying to root out illegals. They're going to have to staff up, like I said. But meanwhile, you get these fucking idiots like Musk and Vivek. We're going to lay off 80% of federal. Woo! I bet you Homeland alone is going to ramp up staffing like you would not believe. I've also noticed on Twitter, Musk and Vivek haven't been saying that stuff the last couple of days. They've started going, oh, we need to. Musk started like shit posting about something else. Yeah, he's now he's talking, cutting spending. Oh, you want to cut? Oh, you want to cut spending now? Oh, okay. So like he's changed his tune, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to change their tune. They're going to try to figure out where they can save money, where they can cut spending. They're not going to fire 80% of the government. Probably what's going to happen is they're going to try to see some of the dumb shit that the budget goes to, and they're going to see if Orange Man can wipe out any of it on executive orders. And since Musk talks a lot about DEI shit, probably one of the first things that's going to go is all the DEI related activity if Orange Man can wipe all that out. And I want to say he did that 8 years ago. I feel like I read that somewhere. So we'll see. But they have, what is it, like a razor thin majority in the Senate or whatever. Like they would have to parse their spending bills out somehow. And I don't know if they can get that passed. But if they could somehow get the spending bill parsing out thing passed, get rid of omnibuses, and then pass spending piecemeal, they could get costs down a lot that way. But guess what? I'll take shit that's never happened for 200, because all those ever fucking do is get bigger, because they pre-write them like 6 months and years in advance and just keep tacking more shit on, and just the dumbest shit. And all of a sudden they're spending $100,000 on a fucking statue somewhere of someone nobody's ever heard of, or some pet project. So, but here's the thing. Like, there's gonna be I can't remember who brought this up, but you're probably gonna see lots of other dumb shit, like all of a sudden the government's driving around Teslas conveniently. All of a sudden everybody's not getting fiber anymore and everyone's getting Starlinks conveniently. It's just trading one Nepo for another Nepo. And it's just like, it's gross. I get it, people like, the trolling and the memes and funny haha. But at some point you realize that like people A don't know how to run the country at all. And B, they don't know how to figure out if anyone else knows how it runs either. And this saying has stuck with me for a long time, which is there is equity in the status quo. And what that means is it means the old way that equity is used. It means there's comfort. It means there's it's just norm it's what's the word I'm looking for? Normalcy bias. Status quo is normalcy bias. At the end of the day, people will choose the path of least resistance, and if you try to change too much too fast, everybody on both sides freaks out and they reject it. Right? You got to change things really, really slow. And what would happen if you all of a sudden get rid of omnibus bills is people would see what the funding really looks like, and I think they would freak out. And if things go this way, and I don't think they will, but like Social Security like will be insolvent, like Medicare and Medicaid will be insolvent, and we will have to spend more money on the military. Now that will bring more jobs to the U.S., which we need, and military contracts are yummy, 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 yum. But here's the problem: you're trying to cut spending and you're trying to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, but you're going to have to beef up your military contracts. Here's the problem: most military contractors, companies, don't have the shit already made because it's too fucking expensive to make a new tank. That YouTuber that I was talking about, was it Task and Purpose? Um, he's talked about that. No, it wasn't Task and Purpose. It was his friend. Here it is. It's Justin Taylor, who's a writer also for Task and Purpose. And he did a video 3 months ago called "Why Do You Get Advertisements for Fighter Jets?" And it's really good, and it explains all that. So how are we supposed to be, reducing our debt when we're going to be buying even more military stuff, and we're going to have to be footing the bill for lots of new R&D because Sleepy Joe and his cabal buddies, spent the last 4 years just throwing away huge chunks of our military tech, like 155 shells and all of our last gen anti-tank missiles, and letting our navy fall apart, and like our big like military oiling ships that we didn't make new ones of. So they're all like this last gen stuff, and the last one just fell apart, and we got to use civilian ones, and they're not spec'd right, and we don't have. Anyway, that's a whole deal. So we're going to be spending money, but that money is going to bring jobs locally because all the military stuff has to be made here. So that's good. Like military contracts are like really juicy. Like I think there's going to be jobs. Um, Job market's tight right now. It's not impossible. It's not like I was saying. It's not like 2013. It is bad though, and I think if a lot of those military contracts and stuff come online, I think a lot of federal is going to organically move back to private if they're working on military contracts anyway. It's basically the same thing. So back to blibbity blobbity blue, back to local crapola. Um, I guess side note, what I don't know is if what's going to happen with commercial real estate. I think for the Pacific Northwest, it's all going to get turned into homeless housing, to like circumvent probably some kind of emergency laws, where they're going to circumvent the fact that the buildings are spec'd wrong and they're not up to earthquake code because they're historical, blah blah blah, and they don't have the money. And that's just going to create a massive dumpster fire. and hopefully there won't be any earthquakes. But I think that's going to be somewhat of like a resurgence, at least in people being able to work on commercial real estate, which is good. But what else is going to have to happen is more police, more police, more police, more police. Um, but instead, if I remember right, what Portland said is it's gonna, even with like the new police chief, if he gets everything he wants or whatever, or the new whoever was going to be in charge of the new mayor or something, I don't know, but it's going to be years before Portland is staffed back up with the amount of police that it used to have. They cannot staff up fast enough for the amount of legals that are going to flood Portland. Seattle is already up to its eyeballs in homeless, and it's going to just get even worse as more climate refugees flood here because the weather in the rest of the U.S. sucks, and it's slightly better here. Um, and as the illegals flood here, a lot of them do have money. They are gonna they're gonna rent up everything they can rent, um, and then some. Now they are trying to ban RVs here, but that's not going to stop anybody from just stealing RVs and trailers and having RVs and trailers and stuff everywhere. So that's going to be an interesting paradigm. Also, you have on top of that, even if the city wanted to arrest illegals for some reason, which they don't, but if they did, they don't have the jail capacity to do so. The jails are at capacity or really close to capacity, and it's just not going to happen. Which means those druggies, they catch a drug dealer. That drug dealer's out the same night, and they are out dealing again. And the cop that arrested them and put them in jail, or tried to put them in jail, that police officer is already seeing that same drug dealer by the end of their shift that they put in at the beginning of their shift. So, I mean, there's like murderers getting out on bail and stuff like right now. Like that's how bad it is. It's nuts. So like, what do you do? Um, you have to realize that no matter what you do, it's going to be considered extreme, and it's going to be radical, and sooner or later everything's going to be illegal anyway. So that aside, you are going to have to decide for yourself what is best for you and your family. Um, some people they say, "Well, we're just going to leave." Well, I got bad news for you. There aren't very many places left to go. You're going to run out of resources, and they're just going to follow you. So when you look at modern defensive tools, guess what? They want to make those illegal. Radios, they want to make those illegal. Body armor, drones, night vision, every single one of those things which should be covered under the Second Amendment is not, and most of it they're trying to ban all of it. So you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do about that, because I still don't think that federal can put down strong enough pro Second Amendment stuff. I don't think they have enough tools in the toolbox, short of flat out arresting the anti Second Amendment apparatus throughout leadership. I don't think they can do it. Like they could, like the Supreme Court could have like the strongest pro Second Amendment interpretation on the planet, and states like Illinois and Washington, Oregon, and California so be like, no, those are unusual weapons, even though a Glock with a 17 round mag is what, like 30 or 40 years old now or something like that. When was, does anyone know in the chat? When was Glock 19 made? Or I guess I should say Glock 17. Yeah, 1988? Glock 17. 82. Yeah, so the Glock 17 was invented in 1982. It has a 17 round mag. Um, 82, 92, 2002, 2012. Yeah, 40 years. Yeah, so Glock 17 is like 40 years old. There's about a bajillion Glock 17s and about a bajillion 17 round mags and 21 round mags floating around. So they're in common use. They're not unusual or anything. And I know you don't need one for hunting deer with Kevlar, but you have to understand, like in Washington, despite a 17 round mag being standard in a Glock that's been around for over 40 years, they're still that is in as common use as it gets. And those pistols have been around forever. They're still saying no, no, you don't need that for self defense. But what does every cop since for the last 40 years has been carrying one for self defense? And so have most people. So if they can take away a Glock 17 and whatever Glock clones you like, if you like your Smith and Wesson M&P Shield or your XDS or XD9 or uh, your H&K, whatever. If they can take away your standard Glock clone 17 round mag, which is like the most ubiquitous self defense handgun on the friggin' planet for the last 40 years, like they can take anything away. And that is like the epitome. It's what everyone thinks. Like, just like how, searching for something on the internet is called Googling it, and sending a fax. Or, no, making a copy was called, Xeroxing. And bandages on your arm, everyone calls like band-aids. Well, a modern pistol is a Glock, and that's what they want to ban. So you have to realize, like, they want to take away the most milk and toast, bread and butter. Like, forget ARs for a second. Forget carbines for a second. Even though they want to ban plastic, period, because they don't want you to be able to turn your pistol into an SPR, or I mean a carbine, collapsible carbine, PCC. Um, they do not want you to be able to defend yourself, and so why wouldn't they want you to have armor, of all things? Why, someone's on your property, but they don't want you to have night vision. Someone's shooting over there, but they don't want you to have a drone to be able to go see safely who's shooting over there. Or someone's flying a drone to your property, but they don't want you to have a drone to be able to go, like, they don't want you to have like a modern shotgun. Like, it's, you just have to realize and forget about the fact that they don't even want you to be exercising, your religious freedoms either. And the fact that we have cultures that are completely incompatible with us that do whatever they want, including attempted honor killings. You can go look that shit up. That shit is wild. That happened here, I believe, in Washington a few weeks ago. There was an attempted honor killing. As far as I know, it's caught on tape. As far as I know, nothing happened about it. Like, you realize that we are an endangered species, and we have to come together. We have to be on the same team and put our bullshit aside. And here's what it was. Here's why I'm doing this episode. You want to know why I'm doing an episode after I said I just wasn't going to do an episode anymore unless I got more feedback? I had a dream, and this is going to sound so fucking stupid, but I apologize. I saw this as clear as day. There was like a Roman legion walking around a big square of Romans. A rectangle of Romans was marching around. In the front of the Roman column, the Romans were fighting for their lives. And at the back of the Roman column, they were all bitching about if they were doing like the right things for the right reasons, and they were nitpicking the soldiers at the front and nitpicking their gear and nitpicking their strategy and their tactics and their clothes and their exercise routines, and they were nitpicking everything about them. And that is like that I woke up and it was like getting hit in the head with like a no shit brick, because that's what is going on with us right now. We're in, figuratively speaking, a war right now. We're just so decentralized, and everyone is such little fucking bitches that it just, I guess, makes them feel better to just sit and bitch about everything and go back to fucking sports ball than it does to actually get ready. And I'm not saying do anything. We should all just be being strived to be left alone. This is not a call to action. Please don't kick my door in. What I'm saying is, and this goes for all of the organized crime also, and it goes for Homeland and everybody. Like, everyone has to get their head in the game, because if you are a patriot of the best country on the freaking planet, you're going to have to look to your left and your right, and you're going to have to figure out who's who's going to work with you. And it could be a bunch of illegals. That's the thing. Like, this isn't like xenophobic hate speech, blah 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 blah. The illegals here that are just trying to mind their own business, which, by the way, we're surrounded by them, and 99.99999% of them are just completely fine, normal people who just are minding their own business and just want to do their own thing. I get that. Like, there may be a day, whoops, sorry, my chair. There may be a day where there's a bunch of illegals running by, fleeing for their lives, and the cartel shows up. Like, that's the whole point of my books, is that you have no idea who your friends are going to be. You could end up helping out Homeland. Some 1%er biker gang may end up saving your ass. Like, it could be another gang. It could be a gang full of an ethnicity you might not even necessarily like or agree with. But, like, at the end of the day, you have to think, are we culturally compatible with these people? Yes or no? And you're going to have to figure that out, because that's always been the irony of this whole thing. Not in my house, not in my blah blah blah. Like, you notice the left always wants to spend other people's money. They always want other people to house them, whether it's migrants or homeless or whatever. And then they want to send all of our money to other countries. Like, my whole point with the whole Roman Legion thing is all of us on both sides have to come together. That wasn't just like a group of like conservative Roman Legion. That metaphor is all of us. All of us have to come together and be on the same team. It is the only way we get through this, because people keep just trying to divide us over dumb shit. And then they keep reviewing movies and criticizing the new stupid shit that Disney's doing and stuff. Like, our culture, but if you look at what they're really trying to say, is that our culture is being torn apart, right? But what is our culture? Being left alone so we can just try to be the best that we can be. And I truly believe, and I made these speculations before the election, and I believe I'm right, that a lot of lefty-loos voted for Orange Man because deep down they want this shit fixed. And if it's anything I've learned in the last almost 10 years, is that a lot of the lefty-loos count on us to have shit figured out. And that's why do you think they say, "Well, I'm coming over to your house. I'm coming over to your house"? because they expect us to have shit figured out. And because they don't want to prep, because I would have to actually, admit that things are going to get fucked up, and they would have to actually admit that they were wrong, and then they hope we're not going to just rub their face in it, like when a cat pees in the front door, and you're like, no, you're not supposed to pee in the front door, or the dog, or whatever, and you take them over to it, and you're like, you're not supposed to pee in the front door. And obviously, like, I told you so doesn't fix anything. Gloating doesn't fix anything. We have to be able to reconcile, because we're being invaded, and the Pacific Northwest is going to be on the front lines, and New York and Atlanta and Denver and a bunch of other places. Some of the rural areas, it's gonna be a challenge because you don't have as many people. In the cities, you might have to fall back to suburban areas. You might have to have buddies in suburban areas, and there's going to be no-go zones. It's going to be like Spain. It's going to be like France. There's going to be places where you can't go anymore. It's going to be like ethnic ghettos, except worse. And you have to be able to have calm, cool, collected heads and be able to fall back and be calm and not do anything crazy and not say or do anything stupid, and hope that we make it 2 more months, and hope that this Tom Human guy can staff up and start dismantling these groups, and hope that giant counter protests don't pop up, because the lefty loot ninjas, they'll start attacking, and they'll start counterattacking fixed locations, and people are just going to have to do a lot of soul searching and realize, think of a bunch of soldiers in, you're all soldiers together. You're all a team. You're all a unit, and that's what we are all. We're all a team, and we're all a unit, and nobody knows where or when the cartels are going to show up, but they're already all over the U.S., and they come from all over the world. And where I used to live, okay, going back to the beginning, the little dog whistles, the little secret codes. What does that look like with the cartels? Tattoos that you're not used to seeing. Face tattoos, chest tattoos, arm tattoos, patches on clothes, stickers on trucks. And you have to get used to seeing and identifying all that stuff. And what happened with me is I was behind a truck in traffic, and I saw a saying in Spanish that I had never seen before, with a logo I'd never seen before. And I'm like, that's weird. And I carefully took a picture of it. Or no, I had a little traffic camera on my car, just to be a little extra safe. And so it recorded it, and I went home, and it's a sticker from a breakaway region of Mexico that armed up and kicked out all of Mexico law enforcement and basically became a complete breakaway region of Mexico inside of Mexico. Kind of like sort of like a Chaz, but in Mexico. An autonomous zone. This armed group created an autonomous zone inside Mexico. Southern Mexico. And there's a lot of southern Mexico stuff that goes on that you don't hear, because it's always the northern border Mexico, Juarez style stuff. But anyway, South Mexico is crazy too. And they're not necessarily violent, but they're very, very, very independent. And I'm like, that's a new one. I've seen a lot of like Mexico groups running around in the Pacific Northwest, but I had never seen that one before. And we've had MS-13 here too. And some other tattoos of like prison gangs and stuff that I couldn't quite recognize. But like, it's only getting worse because they're emptying out the prisons from the rest of the planet and sending all the prisoners here. I can't emphasize that enough. So I'm not saying you got to be like super paranoid and do crazy things. I'm just saying like you need to be more aware and you need to train and practice and prep and be a reasonable, evenly keeled, measured person and just do your best, because no matter what you do, it's all going to be illegal. You're going to be radical no matter what. Just don't be crazy. And I think that's the problem. Like, people find out about this stuff and they haven't planned or prepped and they don't know how to control their adrenaline. And it's the same thing like when you find out like all of a sudden, oh shit, food actually really is way more expensive. People overreact because I call them normies. When a normie wakes up, like from like the Matrix, when normies wake up, it's not good because they have no frame of reference. They have no, how do I say this? They have no range. They don't have a list of tools in the toolbox. They just freak out. Um, they've been in denial for so long, and all of a sudden they can't be in denial anymore, and it just pops them like a bubble. And it's what makes talking about this so frustrating and daunting and scary. Because just like I said, everything's going to be radical, everything's going to be illegal. Speech is the same way. They don't want people talking about this stuff because by and large, if you kind of ignore it, if you keep, if you keep going to streets where it's not happening, plausible deniability, and if the news doesn't talk about it, everybody just creates this like collective delusion that everything's okay. That only works all the way up until everything's not okay. So I believe it's better to at least understand it exists and understand it seems like there's a semblance of a plan in place, and hopefully you've got a couple months more to prepare until this time the new borders are can get his feet planted and get staff moving and grooving to help us so we don't get overran by these violent psychopaths. And again, I want to be clear for everyone listening. I'm not talking about the 99.99999% of folks that are just here to chill and do work. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about like violent, criminal, absolutely unhinged, unglued psychopaths. It's a very small minority, but again, they are able to bully their own groups, and it creates these like bubbles of criminality because they can control their own people through violence. I have seen this personally so many times. I think I gave examples about it last episode. You'll see more shoplifting. You'll see people selling weird stuff on the side of the road. You'll see people trying to like interrupt you going to and from your car and to and from businesses more. You have to learn how to deal with transitional spaces so you don't get interrupted and ambushed. Just a whole like suite of stuff. You have to learn how to control your adrenaline, not get tunnel vision. I mean, the same people that are trying to ban everything else are eventually going to ban training too. So, find a reputable source and get some training. Remember that, training also it gets, it deteriorates. It's like a lot of these self-defense things are perishable skills. Hell, even trying to start a survival fire is a perishable skill. Like, everything's a perishable. Like, what I'm saying is like you have to just do what makes sense for you and your family and your loved ones. And the example that I used is like, are your loved ones more important than other people that you don't know, that are strangers, that you don't know their intentions, and you just want to be left alone and you just want them to leave? That doesn't mean do crazy things, because I've had YouTube videos a long time ago where I used to talk about this all the time of, a kid getting, kid knocked on the wrong house, bad stuff happened. He was looking for his friend, a kid's ball went into someone else's yard and bad things happened. Like, people get too wound up when they're not ready and prepared for this stuff and they overreact. So it takes a lot of patience because there's going to be people off their meds. There's going to be people that can't handle their adrenaline. So it's your job to be cool, calm, and prepared and do the smartest, most sensible things and just try to get out of there. Avoid fighting. Don't get ambushed. Don't try to drive through street lockdowns. That's the dumbest thing on the planet. Don't go out at night. You know, have plans to always know where your family is. If you've got a way to find them on the phones and stuff, like, just try to figure this stuff out. I can't emphasize this enough. Like, this is about being cool, calm, collected, prepared, and you're gonna have to soul search and realize that there is potentially going to be a lot more people on your team. This isn't about isolating people from your team. This is about realizing there's going to be more people on your team than you thought. That's how my books started. There's this question from Conflicted. It's a card game, and it says, if a witch doctor wanted to join your group, would you let him? And that's kind of what jump-started a lot of the ideas from my books. It's like, my whole book series is about letting people join your group because they're culturally compatible. That's it. And then you move forward from there. If they're eating the cats and they're eating the dogs and they're eating each other and they've got trank zombie virus fucking drugs and shit, you're gonna have to make some judgment calls there, right? Or you're gonna have to get out. I can't emphasize that enough. This is about being peaceful, being left alone, and having a really strong team that gets along. And being aware and not criticizing people over stupid shit. Like people that like 40 cal pistols. I don't get it, okay? But that doesn't mean that stupid shit like that has to tear your group up. Or some people like this sleeping bag and some people like that sleeping bag. Deal with it. Like, realize that you're all moving together in the same direction. If you both like the Pacific Northwest and you both grew up in the Pacific Northwest, that should be enough. Because turning this place into an open air criminal asylum is going to make it kind of hard to raise kids here. Not to mention all of the other things that are going on. But I still think that is going to be the number one thing. I think ICE moving in is going to cause the protesters to go apeshit as they try to stop deportations. And I think a lot of innocent people are going to be stuck in the middle. And I just think everyone should be prepared, but not based on what other people tell you is and isn't okay to be prepared. You got to be prepared in the way that you think it makes the most sense to be prepared. Don't let other people tell you what to do. But don't do anything stupid. None of this is medical, dental, legal, any advice about anything. And you have no idea how hard it is to make these podcasts, being fucking scared to death that being as absolutely ludicrously tolerant as possible is somehow going to end you up in the gulag. It's terrifying. But everything we do is going to be illegal sooner or later, including being a Christian. Being a Christian is going to be illegal sooner or later. And they're going to say that Christians are fascists and they're going to try to throw Christians in the fucking gulag. So it's just like, what do you do? What do you do, right? I don't know. You have to follow your heart. You have to do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it and where you're told and where you're put. And this all comes together in my head. And I just feel like I have to tell somebody. And I'm preaching tolerance here and patience. Like, this should be okay. Anyway, y'all take care, and the only way we make it through this together, and there's still time. There's still time. Okay, I legitimately see a way through this. I see a way where things are going to be okay for a while longer. It's just different people in different areas are going to have different problems. And I think this is going to be our problem. And in several other places. But I think you're going to see things in New York get crazy way faster than here. So I guess we'll see. Um, Y'all take care. Thanks for encouraging me to keep making things.